The year is 1517, and Europe is a continent dominated by the Catholic Church. From the majestic cathedrals of France to the humble chapels of Germany, religion was more than faith. It was the cornerstone of society, influencing politics, education, and even daily life. But beneath this serene surface, tensions were brewing, and a storm was about to erupt that would change Europe forever: the Reformation. During this time, the Church's power extended beyond spirituality. It was the largest landowner in Europe, wielding immense economic and political influence. Monarchs often sought the Church's approval to legitimize their rule, while the papacy acted as a mediator in international disputes. This intertwining of religious and political authority created a system ripe for disruption. Before the Reformation, the Catholic Church held unparalleled power. It was the spiritual guide for millions, the controller of education, and the arbiter of political disputes. But this immense authority was not without controversy. Practices like indulgences, payments for the forgiveness of sins, sparked widespread resentment, especially among the lower classes. For the wealthy, indulgences were a means to buy salvation, but for the poor, they symbolized the Church's exploitation. Corruption within the clergy further alienated the faithful. High-ranking officials often lived in opulence, flaunting wealth that starkly contrasted with the poverty of their congregations. Simony, or the sale of church offices, turned sacred positions into commodities. This growing disconnect between the Church and its followers sowed the seeds of discontent. Amid this backdrop of unrest, a technological revolution was unfolding. Johannes Gutenberg's printing press, invented in the mid-15th century, revolutionized communication. What once took months to copy by hand could now be produced in days. This innovation made it possible for ideas to spread rapidly, reaching audiences that had previously been inaccessible. The printing press would become a critical tool in the Reformation, amplifying voices that challenged the status quo. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther became the spark that lit the fire. Troubled by the Church's sale of indulgences, Luther wrote his 95 Theses, a list of grievances questioning the Church's practices. According to tradition, he nailed this document to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church, an act of defiance that reverberated across Europe. Luther's critiques were not limited to indulgences. He challenged the very foundation of church authority, asserting that the Bible, not the Pope, was the ultimate source of divine truth. This idea, that individuals could interpret Scripture for themselves, was revolutionary. It undermined the Church's monopoly on spiritual knowledge and empowered ordinary people to question religious dogma. Thanks to the printing press, Luther's ideas spread like wildfire. Pamphlets and translated versions of the Bible reached a wide audience, fostering a growing movement of reform-minded Christians. What began as a theological dispute quickly escalated into a social and political revolution. In 1521, Luther was summoned to the Diet of Worms, a council convened by Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Facing excommunication and potential execution, Luther refused to recant his beliefs, famously declaring, "Here I stand, I can do no other." His defiance solidified his role as a leader of the Protestant Reformation and marked a turning point in European history. Luther's ideas inspired others to break from Rome. In Switzerland, Huldrych Zwingli led a similar movement, emphasizing a return to Scripture and rejecting Catholic rituals. In Geneva, John Calvin developed Calvinism, a theology centered on predestination and the sovereignty of God. Calvin's strict moral code and disciplined governance transformed Geneva into a model Protestant city. England's Reformation took a different path. In 1534, King Henry VIII broke with Rome, not over theological disputes, but to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. This political maneuver led to the establishment of the Church of England, with the monarch as its supreme head. While initially a political act, the English Reformation would later adopt Protestant ideals, further fragmenting Christianity in Europe. As Protestantism spread, it brought profound changes to worship and daily life. Churches were stripped of ornate decorations, services were conducted in local languages, and the Bible became accessible to all. These reforms democratized faith, emphasizing a personal connection with God over institutional mediation. The Catholic Church was not idle during this upheaval. The Counter-Reformation sought to address corruption and reaffirm core doctrines. The Council of Trent, convened between 1545 and 1563, clarified Catholic beliefs and banned the sale of indulgences. This internal reform revitalized the Church, strengthening its position in Southern Europe and beyond. The Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, became one of the Church's most effective tools. Founded by Ignatius of Loyola, the Jesuits focused on education, missionary work, and defending Catholicism against Protestantism. They established schools and universities, trained clergy, and carried Catholicism to Asia, Africa, and the Americas. The Reformation's impact extended far beyond religion. It triggered wars of religion, such as the 30 Years' War, which devastated Europe. These conflicts reshaped borders, weakened the Holy Roman Empire, and contributed to the rise of nation-states. The Reformation also spurred social change. Literacy rates rose as Protestants emphasized reading the Bible. Education expanded, laying the groundwork for the Enlightenment. Women found new roles within Protestant communities, often as educators and moral guides. The Reformation reshaped Europe in profound ways. It fractured the unity of Christendom, paving the way for religious pluralism. It challenged traditional authority, encouraging individualism and critical thinking. And it set the stage for modern democracy by promoting the idea that all people are equal before God,